ChatGPT said, "Good morning. Today, let's dive into something simple, often overlooked, yet surprisingly powerful: seeds." Now, I get it. It might not sound like the most exciting topic, but for those of us past 60 or anyone planning to thrive well beyond that age, this conversation is far from trivial. As we age, maintaining muscle mass, supporting bone density, and keeping metabolic health in check become more crucial. And when it comes to those health goals, the small things really do make a difference. Take chia seeds, for example. On the surface, they seem pretty unremarkable: small, black or white, and almost tasteless. But that's often the case with longevity. The most unassuming tools can produce remarkable results if used wisely. For anyone stepping into or already in their 60s, every little bit of strength, mobility, and resilience matters. That's why chia seeds deserve more attention than they usually get. Let's break it down. Starting with macronutrients. Chia seeds are mostly fiber, with over 80% of their carbohydrate content being indigestible. This makes them virtually carb-free for most people and definitely low on the glycemic index. That's a huge benefit if you're trying to optimize your metabolic health or manage insulin sensitivity. This is especially important as we age, when the risk of insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and metabolic syndrome increases. But that's just scratching the surface. Chia's standout feature is its impressive calcium content. In fact, chia contains more calcium by weight than dairy milk, around 179 mg per 28 grams serving, roughly 2 tablespoons. For comparison, a 1/4 cup of milk has only about 80 mg. This shows just how nutrient-dense chia can be. But it's not just the amount of calcium that matters, it's the other minerals too. Chia also provides magnesium and phosphorus, two essential elements that help your body use that calcium to build and strengthen bone tissue. For people over 60, this is especially critical. As we age, bone loss accelerates, particularly for women after menopause. Osteopenia and osteoporosis are often silent conditions until they become serious, usually after a fall. A broken hip isn't just a fracture. For many, it signals the start of a decline in independence, which significantly increases the risk of mortality in the following year. Unlike joint pain, bone loss doesn't announce itself, so it's important to take proactive steps to protect bone density, especially through dietary choices that support mineral sufficiency, and that's where chia seeds come in. Another key aspect of chia is its fat content. Chia is a plant-based source of omega-3 fatty acids, specifically alpha-linolenic acid, ALA. While ALA is different from the EPA and DHA found in fish oil, which have much more research supporting their benefits for reducing inflammation, cardiovascular health, and brain function, ALA is still beneficial. Though conversion rates of ALA to EPA are low, usually under 5%, ALA still has anti-inflammatory properties, especially if your diet is otherwise high in omega-6 fats. If you're not eating fatty fish regularly or supplementing with fish oil, chia can be a good partial substitute. However, if you're looking to fully optimize your omega-3 levels, chia alone isn't enough. Where chia really shines, in my opinion, is in its fiber content and the way it impacts satiety and blood sugar. When you mix chia seeds with liquid, they form a gelatinous texture because of their soluble fiber and mucilage. This slows down stomach emptying and helps prevent sharp glucose spikes after a carb-heavy meal. If you're aiming to improve insulin sensitivity, manage hunger without counting calories, or support gut health, this delayed digestion is incredibly valuable. And this isn't just theory. Several small studies have looked at chia supplementation and found modest reductions in post-meal glucose and insulin responses, as well as improvements in HDL cholesterol and slight reductions in inflammatory markers like CRP. While none of these effects are groundbreaking on their own, they add up over time. In the bigger picture, small, consistent efforts, like adding chia to your diet, can nudge your health in a better direction. Speaking of systems, one area where chia may provide indirect benefits is gut microbiota. We now know that dietary fiber influences the diversity and balance of gut flora, which in turn impacts systemic inflammation, immune modulation, and even cognitive function. Chia's fiber, especially its soluble component, ferments slowly in the colon and acts as a prebiotic, feeding beneficial strains of bacteria. Again, this isn't flashy, and the data specific to chia is still emerging, but the mechanistic plausibility is strong. Let me pivot for a moment and talk about protein, because it's a critical issue for anyone over 60. Chia seeds do contain protein, about 4 to 5 grams per ounce, but it's incomplete in terms of amino acid profile. It's not going to replace your chicken breast or whey isolate. However, for plant-based individuals or those looking to add amino acids throughout the day, chia can be a supporting player. It contains a decent amount of arginine and glutamine, which are relevant to nitric oxide production and gut repair, respectively. And then there's the ease of use. I often talk about friction in health behaviors, how even small inconveniences can prevent people from sticking to a protocol. Chia seeds are frictionless. No prep, no spoilage, no cooking. You can stir a tablespoon into your morning smoothie, mix it into Greek yogurt, or even create a fiber-rich chia pudding with almond milk and cinnamon. That kind of convenience matters because ultimately adherence trumps optimization. A perfectly optimized diet that you can't sustain is less useful than a 90% solution you repeat every day. One practical tip I often give patients: hydrate your chia. Don't just sprinkle dry seeds on a salad and assume you're getting the full benefit. The mucilage forms best when seeds are soaked for 20 to 30 minutes, and that gel structure is what helps satiety, blood sugar regulation, and digestion. Aim for 1 to 2 tablespoons daily. More than that, and you may encounter digestive issues, especially if your fiber intake is low to begin with. Are chia seeds a miracle food? No. But in the context of an aging physiology, where calcium needs increase, insulin sensitivity declines, inflammation rises, and appetite regulation becomes more difficult, they represent a low-cost, low-risk intervention that supports several of the most important systems we're trying to protect. That's what longevity often comes down to. Stacking marginal gains in a way that protects against decline, maintains function, and improves optionality as we age. And that's why I see chia seeds not as a trend or a gimmick, but as a worthwhile component of a deliberate, performance-based nutritional strategy. It's not just about living longer, it's about increasing the number of high-quality years where you're strong, sharp, and self-sufficient. Chia seeds help tip the scales, 1 tablespoon at a time. If we want to talk seriously about aging well, functionally, not just chronologically, we have to talk about muscle. Muscle is far more than just tissue that moves your skeleton. It's a metabolic organ. It regulates insulin sensitivity, supports balance, posture, and thermoregulation. Most importantly, it protects you from the slow slide into frailty, dependency, and decline. And one of the hidden players in supporting that muscle, often overlooked, is a food as common as it is powerful: pumpkin seeds. At first glance, pumpkin seeds seem too simple to warrant much attention. They're snackable, they're small, but dig deeper, and you find a profile of nutrients uniquely suited to address some of the biggest physiological vulnerabilities we face after 60. These seeds, also called pepitas, are compact with protein, minerals, and biologically active compounds that target bone integrity, muscle performance, immune health, and even sleep, all crucial as we age. Let's begin with one of the minerals that goes unrecognized but plays a starring role in muscle and metabolic function: magnesium. Most adults, especially older adults, are magnesium deficient. In fact, by some estimates, over 50% of people over 60 consume less than the recommended daily intake. That's a problem because magnesium is involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. Of particular relevance to our discussion today are its roles in ATP synthesis, muscle contraction, and glucose transport. When you're magnesium deficient, your mitochondria don't work efficiently. And since your mitochondria are the power plants inside every cell, especially muscle cells, this means lower output, slower recovery, and more fatigue. Low magnesium also impairs the ability of cells to respond to insulin, leading to increased insulin resistance. For an aging population, where type 2 diabetes is a looming risk, anything that can nudge the metabolic needle back towards sensitivity is worth considering. Pumpkin seeds deliver around 150–170 milligallons of magnesium per ounce, which puts them among the highest magnesium-dense whole foods you can eat. When you consider that the recommended daily intake for men over 50 is 420 milligrams, and 320 milligrams for women, a single ounce of pumpkin seeds can provide 30 to 50% of that. That's a powerful dose with very little dietary friction. Magnesium also plays an essential role in neuromuscular function, the ability of your nerves to fire your muscles properly. As we age, there is a natural decline in motor neurons, which contributes to dynapenia, the loss of muscle strength that's not necessarily associated with mass loss. Maintaining optimal magnesium levels may help preserve the nerve-muscle connection, supporting better coordination, faster reflexes, and greater muscle output during resistance training, which should, by the way, be a non-negotiable part of your longevity plan. Next is zinc, another mineral found in abundance in pumpkin seeds. 1 ounce provides about 2.2 milligrams or 20% of the recommended daily intake. Zinc isn't just an immune booster, although that's often how it's marketed. It's a coactor in anabolic hormone production, including testosterone. And while most of the concerns about testosterone focus on men, it's relevant for women too, especially post-menopausal women who experience a dramatic drop in sex hormone levels that can affect bone density, muscle mass, and libido. Zinc also influences wound healing, cell replication, and inflammation modulation, key systems that decline subtly but significantly as we get older. It's one of those minerals that touches multiple domains at once, and insufficient intake, even if mild, has been associated with increased frailty, slower recovery from injury, and impaired immune response. Now, let's shift to iron, a mineral that, when deficient, reduces the oxygen-carrying capacity of the blood, leading to fatigue, reduced endurance, and even cognitive sluggishness. Pumpkin seeds contain 2 to 3 mg of iron per ounce, depending on the variety. While plant-based non-heme iron isn't as bioavailable as heme iron from animal sources, pairing it with vitamin C, e.g. lemon juice or peppers in a meal, significantly enhances absorption. Why does iron matter? Because oxygen transport is at the heart of everything, from muscle contraction to brain function. If your cells can't get oxygen efficiently, your whole system slows down. And this matters even more if you're someone who has reduced red meat consumption in later life, whether for health reasons, lifestyle changes, or simply decreased appetite. That brings us to protein, a macronutrient that's critical for anyone concerned with muscle retention, and arguably even more important after 60 than before. Pumpkin seeds contain about 7 grams of protein per ounce, which is more than an egg. While the amino acid profile isn't perfectly complete like animal proteins, it includes significant amounts of leucine, the key amino acid that triggers muscle protein synthesis through the mTOR pathway. Here's the problem. Older adults become more resistant to anabolic signaling, a phenomenon known as anabolic resistance. This means that where a younger person might stimulate muscle protein synthesis with 20 grams of protein, an older adult might need 30 grams or more. Higher leucine content in pumpkin seeds can contribute meaningfully as part of a distributed protein strategy across the day. For example, adding an ounce to a smoothie or yogurt adds not only protein, but a rich mineral payload. There's also an often overlooked benefit of pumpkin seeds that intersects with recovery and sleep: tryptophan. Tryptophan is a precursor to serotonin, which in turn is a precursor to melatonin, the hormone that regulates sleep-wake cycles. Pumpkin seeds are one of the best plant-based sources of tryptophan, about 500 milligauns per ounce. This matters because sleep becomes more fragmented with age, and poor sleep impairs not just cognition, but hormone production, glucose regulation, and tissue repair. Consuming tryptophan-rich foods in the evening, particularly alongside carbohydrates, may support more robust melatonin synthesis and deeper sleep. Sleep also feeds back into muscle preservation. Growth hormone pulses during deep sleep, particularly in the first cycle of the night. If you don't get that slow-wave sleep, your body's regenerative capacity is impaired. So, while pumpkin seeds are not a sleep aid in themselves, they provide some of the substrate needed for the body to build its own. It's also worth mentioning pumpkin seeds' antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. First of those would be they contain several polyphenols, tocopherols, vitamin E compounds, and plant sterols that may reduce oxidative stress, especially in the context of a high-inflammatory environment such as one driven by excess adiposity, sedentary behavior, or chronic disease. These compounds have been studied for their effects on LDL oxidation, prostate health, and even insulin signaling, though the data in humans remains preliminary. From a practical standpoint, pumpkin seeds are incredibly versatile. They don't require refrigeration, they're shelf-stable, they don't spike glucose, and you can add them to oatmeal, salads, smoothies, or just eat them by the handful. You can grind them into a paste like pumpkin seed butter, blend them into protein bars, or incorporate them into trail mix. For older adults who may have reduced appetite or difficulty consuming large meals, this nutrient density in a small volume is a major advantage. But it's important to recognize the context. Pumpkin seeds aren't a replacement for high-quality protein sources. They aren't a substitute for strength training or adequate sleep. What they are is a low-friction, high-leverage addition to a diet that aims to support muscle quality, bone integrity, metabolic function, and resilience, especially as the organism becomes less forgiving with age. And when we zoom out, that's really the whole framework. Longevity isn't about hacks or miracle foods. It's about system optimization, about giving your body the micronutrients, macronutrients, and signals it needs to thrive, especially when those needs become harder to meet with time. Pumpkin seeds are one of those quiet tools in the toolbox that you don't notice their absence until things start to break. But with consistency, they contribute to the structural integrity of the body, not just metaphorically, but biochemically. When you're building a life after 60 that emphasizes function, the ability to lift your grandchild, carry groceries, or climb stairs without fear, every nutritional input counts. Pumpkin seeds don't have the marketing glow of collagen peptides or the hype of MCT oil, but what they do have is a constellation of nutrients that support the systems that matter: muscle, bone, blood, mitochondria, and the brain. That's a return on investment that's hard to ignore. When we think about nutritional strategies for aging with strength, clarity, and metabolic health, the usual suspects come to mind: protein, resistance training, omega-3s from fish, creatine, and vitamin D. But occasionally, a humble food comes along that quietly impacts multiple aging-related pathways, often with impressive results. Flax seeds are one such food. At first glance, flax seeds seem pretty unremarkable. Small, hard, and almost flavorless unless roasted, they're often pushed to the sidelines of the diet world. But beneath their modest exterior lies one of the most nutritionally dense seeds, particularly for aging bodies. The real magic of flax seeds isn't from just one standout nutrient. It's the combination of three powerful benefits: fiber, omega-3 fatty acids, and lignans, a unique group of phytoestrogens. Each of these deserves closer attention, especially when viewed together in the context of supporting health span and longevity. Let's begin with fiber. As we age, our digestive system changes. Motility slows, stomach emptying becomes less efficient, and the diversity of our gut microbiota decreases, increasing the risk of insulin resistance, especially after meals. Fiber, particularly soluble and fermentable fiber, is one of the most effective non-drug approaches to combat these issues at once. Flax seeds are about 27% fiber by weight, with a significant portion being soluble fiber. This type of fiber absorbs water in the gut, forming a gel-like substance. That's important because it slows down gastric emptying, smooths out glucose and insulin spikes after meals, and enhances satiety, critical for managing body composition and metabolic health, especially since appetite regulation can become skewed with age. In fact, several small studies have found that flaxseed consumption can help reduce fasting blood glucose and HbA1c levels in people with type 2 diabetes, while also improving lipid profiles. Additionally, the soluble fiber in flax serves as a prebiotic, nourishing beneficial bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. These SCFAs help maintain the gut barrier, reduce inflammation, and even affect gene expression through epigenetic mechanisms. This isn't just theory. Emerging research is linking gut-derived inflammation to conditions like neurodegeneration, muscle loss, sarcopenia, and cardiovascular problems in older adults. By influencing the gut microbiome and reducing low-grade inflammation, often called inflammaging, we might be able to slow down or prevent multiple age-related issues. Flax seeds also stand out for their omega-3 content, specifically alpha-linolenic acid, ALA. A teaspoon of ground flax contains about 1.6 to 1.8 grams of ALA, which is comparable to the omega-3s found in many fish oil supplements, though in a different form. ALA is converted into EPA and DHA in the body, but the conversion rate is quite low, typically around 5 to 10% for EPA and less than 1% for DHA. That said, ALA is far from useless. It's been shown to have anti-inflammatory effects, improve cell membrane function, and support vascular health, even without being converted into EPA and DHA. In terms of cardiovascular health, higher ALA intake has been associated with a lower risk of heart attacks and sudden cardiac death. For individuals who don't eat fatty fish regularly or avoid fish altogether, flax seeds become an important source of omega-3s. However, if you're aiming to optimize DHA levels, especially for cognitive health and retinal function, you'll still want to consider other sources of omega-3s. Now, let's talk about lignans, especially in the context of older adults, and particularly postmenopausal women. Flax seeds are the richest dietary source of lignans, which are phytoestrogens that structurally resemble estrogen but have a more selective effect on estrogen receptors. Lignans act as modulators, not mimics, meaning they don't have the same strong effect as estrogen, but can still influence estrogen-sensitive pathways in a way that might benefit those with reduced estrogen levels. For postmenopausal women who experience a sharp drop in estrogen, affecting bone density, metabolism, and cognitive function, lignans can offer a plant-based alternative to synthetic hormone replacement therapies. Several studies have investigated how flaxseed lignans influence lipid profiles, hot flashes, and even breast cancer markers, with generally favorable results. In terms of lipid modulation, flax seeds have been shown to reduce LDL cholesterol, likely through a combination of fiber and lignans. A meta-analysis of 28 trials found that flaxseed consumption lowered LDL cholesterol by an average of 10 mg/dl in individuals with high cholesterol, an effect that could have real clinical significance. But lignans don't just affect lipids, they also have antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. Some studies suggest that lignans can help reduce oxidative stress, inhibit cancer cell growth, and support DNA repair. Although more research is needed in humans to confirm these effects, the mechanisms behind them are promising, and flax seeds have a solid safety profile, making them a low-risk, high-reward addition to your diet. One of the more exciting areas of flaxseed research is its potential impact on blood pressure. A 2013 study published in Hypertension found that giving hypertensive patients 30 grams of ground flax seeds daily for 6 months led to a significant drop in both systolic 10 mmHg and diastolic 7 mmHg blood pressure, effects comparable to first-line blood pressure medications. While the study had some limitations and needs replication, the findings are promising for older adults managing chronic conditions. Any natural intervention that can lower blood pressure without side effects is worth considering. Of course, no food is without caveats. For flaxseed, the form in which it is consumed is critical. Whole flax seeds often pass through the digestive tract undigested, meaning the nutrients within remain inaccessible. The ground form is essential if you want to absorb the ALA, lignans, and fiber. However, once ground, flaxseed is vulnerable to oxidation, especially due to its high polyunsaturated fatty acid (PUFA) content. For this reason, it should be stored in airtight containers, refrigerated and used within a few weeks, or ground fresh if possible. There's also the matter of dosage. Most of the positive studies use 30 g per day, which is roughly 2 to 3 tablespoons of ground flaxseed. This amount provides about 8 grams of fiber, 6 grams of protein, 6 grams of ALA, and a full spectrum of lignans. For people just starting out, it's wise to begin with a smaller dose to avoid gastrointestinal discomfort and increase gradually while hydrating adequately. From a practical standpoint, flaxseed is highly adaptable. You can stir it into oatmeal, smoothies, yogurt, or baked goods. You can use it to thicken sauces or as an egg replacement in vegan cooking. It doesn't have a strong taste, which makes adherence easy, an essential but underrated feature of any intervention aimed at long-term compliance. What I often emphasize with patients is that aging well is about system redundancy. You want overlapping systems supporting bone health, muscle mass, glucose regulation, vascular compliance, and cognitive function, and flaxseed checks multiple boxes: metabolic, cardiovascular, hormonal, and microbial. It's not a magic bullet, but it is a strategic ally, especially when stacked with other foundational habits like strength training, protein optimization, adequate sleep, and glycemic control. How to combine seeds for synergistic benefits. Flaxseed is a classic example of a low-cost, low-risk, nutrient-dense intervention that supports the physiology of aging across several domains. It provides soluble and insoluble fiber to support gut health and glycemic regulation. It delivers plant-based omega-3s that contribute to inflammation resolution and vascular function. It offers lignans, which may support hormonal modulation and cancer risk reduction. It may help lower blood pressure and improve lipid profiles. It contributes micronutrients like magnesium, selenium, and manganese, which are critical to cellular and metabolic integrity. It's not flashy, it's not trendy, but it works slowly, quietly, and systemically. And when you're playing the long game of longevity, that's exactly the kind of intervention that deserves a place at the table. It's easy to overlook sesame seeds. They're everywhere, yet rarely the center of attention, sprinkled on burger buns, embedded in crackers, or ground into tahini. They're often used more for texture than function, something added for aesthetics rather than biological benefit. But when viewed through the lens of aging physiology and cellular optimization, sesame seeds begin to tell a different story. At their core, sesame seeds are a nutrient-dense food. But what makes them particularly interesting isn't just the calorie or protein count. It's the synergistic network of bioactive compounds they contain. These compounds touch on several aging-relevant systems: bone integrity, lipid metabolism, oxidative stress, hormone signaling, and cellular detoxification. This multi-system effect is what draws attention when the goal is to increase not just lifespan, but functional lifespan. That period of life when one can still lift heavy, think clearly, move independently, and recover quickly. Let's begin with one of the most critical issues we face after age 60, bone loss. The risk of osteoporosis increases significantly post-menopause in women and gradually in aging men. As testosterone and other anabolic hormones decline, bones become porous, fragile, and more prone to fractures, a primary cause of morbidity and mortality in older adults. While calcium and vitamin D are the usual suspects in bone health conversations, they are far from the full picture. Sesame seeds offer a unique mineral trifecta that supports skeletal health: calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus in highly bioavailable forms. Just 1 ounce of sesame seeds contains roughly 280 milligrams of calcium, nearly 30% of the RDA for women over 50. For individuals avoiding dairy or following plant-based diets, sesame becomes one of the most concentrated sources of dietary calcium available. But calcium without magnesium and phosphorus doesn't work in isolation. Magnesium regulates calcium transport and integration into the bone matrix. Without adequate magnesium, you get calcium mismanagement, more arterial calcification, less skeletal deposition. Phosphorus, meanwhile, works alongside calcium to form hydroxyapatite, the structural backbone of bone tissue. The fact that sesame seeds contain all three in reasonable ratios means they act as a natural skeletal maintenance system, supporting the remodeling process that becomes impaired with age. There's also zinc, another mineral found in sesame seeds that often gets overlooked in the context of bone and muscle health. Zinc is required for the function of osteoblasts, bone-building cells, and also modulates testosterone levels. Subclinical zinc deficiency, common in older adults, has been linked to reduced bone mineral density and impaired muscle protein synthesis. An ounce of sesame seeds provides about 2 milligrams of zinc, an easy dietary bump in a system that increasingly resists change with age. Another aging pathway where sesame seeds offer surprising influence is oxidative stress management. As we age, the body's ability to buffer reactive oxygen species, ROS, declines. This contributes to DNA damage, mitochondrial dysfunction, lipid peroxidation, and inflammation. While antioxidants in food are often overhyped, some deserve closer scrutiny, especially when they affect endogenous defense systems rather than simply acting as direct scavengers. Sesame seeds contain unique lignans, particularly sesamin and sesamol, which modulate antioxidant enzyme systems like glutathione, peroxidase, and superoxide dismutase. What's notable is not just their antioxidant potential, but their impact on phase 1 and phase 2 liver detoxification enzymes, specifically cytochrome P450 enzymes that process both xenobiotics and endogenous hormones. In this respect, sesame lignans don't just neutralize free radicals, they optimize detoxification pathways, enhancing the body's ability to handle oxidative stress from within. That leads us to another aging relevant system: lipid metabolism and vascular health. Cardiovascular disease remains the leading cause of death in older adults, and managing lipids remains one of the most actionable levers. Sesame seeds contain both monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. But more importantly, they've been shown in human studies to lower LDL cholesterol, reduce triglycerides, and raise HDL, a rare trifecta. Some of these effects are due to the phytosterols in sesame, compounds structurally similar to cholesterol that compete for absorption in the gut, thereby lowering serum levels. But there's also a less understood but emerging mechanism. Lignans appear to inhibit lipid peroxidation. This means they reduce the oxidation of LDL particles, a critical first step in atherogenesis. Oxidized LDL is not just a biomarker. It's causally involved in the progression of plaque formation and vascular inflammation. Lowering total LDL is good, but lowering oxidized LDL is even better. That's what sesame compounds appear to do, particularly in combination with vitamin E, another antioxidant nutrient found in the seed. Interestingly, sesame seeds also affect hepatic fat metabolism. Several animal studies and small human trials have shown that sesame can downregulate lipogenic enzymes in the liver, reducing hepatic triglyceride production. That has implications not just for cholesterol, but for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD, which is becoming increasingly common in older populations, even in those who are not overweight. Managing liver fat is a key part of preserving insulin sensitivity and systemic metabolic health. Speaking of insulin, sesame seeds have demonstrated mild anti-hypoglycemic effects in some clinical contexts. While the exact mechanisms are still under investigation, there's evidence that sesame may enhance glucose uptake in peripheral tissues and modulate adiponectin levels, an adipokine that improves insulin sensitivity and has anti-inflammatory effects. These benefits, although modest in magnitude, are significant when applied consistently and synergistically with other dietary and behavioral interventions like resistance training and intermittent fasting. Another intriguing feature of sesame seeds is their hormonal modulation, particularly in postmenopausal women. Much like flax seeds, sesame contains phytoestrogens that interact weakly with estrogen receptors, functioning more as selective estrogen receptor modulators, SERMs, than true mimetics. A double-blind trial published in Nutrition Research showed that 50 grams of sesame seed powder per day significantly improved serum estrogen levels, antioxidant status, and lipid profiles in postmenopausal women. While not a replacement for HRT, sesame seeds may provide a dietary buffer for the hormonal shifts that accompany aging. We should also talk about sesame oil, which concentrates many of the same benefits but delivers them in a different matrix. Cold-pressed sesame oil contains sesamin and sesamol, two lignans with neuroprotective, anti-inflammatory, and hepatoprotective properties. Some studies have shown reductions in blood pressure, improvements in arterial elasticity, and enhanced cognitive function,